Okay, I'm sure you've all heard this before, but I'm going to say it again. Roughly 80% of air resistance that you experience when cycling comes from your body. The remaining comes from your bike, kit, and equipment, all of which is important and should be taken into consideration if you do want to go faster on the bike. Obviously, your fitness plays a big factor, but your position and your equipment should not be overlooked. So today, we've teamed up with Notio, and we're going to be giving you 5 ways that you can test your cycling aerodynamics. Okay, let's start with probably the most basic of the tests, and this is the roll down test. Now this one's really quite simple. You can perform it yourself out on the road, but with that does come some slightly more rough results, but it does obviously provide a very nice indication, and it can be performed without a power meter. So ideally, you need to find a nice downhill that kicks straight into a bit of an uphill at the end, a bit like a ski jump. Then from a standstill, don't pedal, just roll down the hill and see how far up the other side you get before grinding to a halt. And simply track the time, speed, and distance that you get for each of your runs as you compare different positions or kit. Now, the only thing to be wary of with all of these tests that are outdoors is that the weather isn't changing. So the wind and the air pressure remains the same throughout all the tests, or obviously as close to as you possibly can. So that means performing all the tests at the same time on the same day. In addition to that as well, a very important ground rule with all aero testing is that you shouldn't change more than one variable or one thing at a time. So for instance, you don't change your position and a piece of kit at the same time, because therefore it would be quite hard to decipher which has had what effect in your results. Right then, moving on a level, I guess, we have the standard backyard field test. And as the name suggests, this is another one that you can perform yourself out on the road. However, for this, you'll need a power meter and some way of measuring your speed. But with that does come some slightly more accurate results when you compare it to the previous roll down test. And this is one that I've performed numerous times before myself. So yeah, I think if I can do it, I'm pretty sure you guys can do it. It's really quite simple. What I found best practice is using a nice flat and relatively straight section of road between 2 to 3 kilometers long. I've actually known people to use existing Strava segments before, or even going as far as creating a Strava segment so they've got the same start and end point on each of their runs. And the idea is quite simple, really. You try and travel at the same speed on each of your runs, and you monitor and track your power difference between each of those. So for instance, if you're able to travel at the same speed but put out less power, well, that means you're more aerodynamic and you're onto a winner. Obviously, the biggest issue or the biggest hindrance may be actually being able to travel at the same speed. So again, from experience, suggestion here is having a good roll in before the segment starts, so you hit that start point at the same speed on each of those runs. Another thing to bear in mind is that you can't control all the variables such as the weather, but you may unintentionally change your position when you shouldn't have. So also just make sure you do a number of runs on each of your setups to get the best results possible. Well, following on from that, we have the Chong method developed by Robert Chong. And again, one that you can perform yourself out on the road. Now, this is one that I've not actually done myself before, but it does seem to be incredibly popular, partly because it's a little bit more accurate again than the previous 2 tests, but also because you can test several variables all within the space of around 30 minutes. So you'll need a power meter, and you need to find a quiet stretch of road with a dip in it. Ride down one side of the hill and up the other side, turning around at the top without touching your brakes, and repeating a few times over for each test while staying in your position the whole time. And that is it, really. The hill naturally allows you to slow down without having to touch your brakes or even move from the position you're in on your bike each time. So then it's just simply a case of downloading your data from your head unit or from your watch into a free bit of software, which some of you may be familiar with, called Golden Cheetah. So within this, load up the Aero Chong analysis tool and enter a few specifics such as weight, air density, and rolling resistance. Don't worry, you can actually find the last two online quite easily. Once these variables are entered, the software will be able to calculate your drag and compare each of the runs. So yeah, this one's meant to be a very good option. It's certainly been quite popular in the past, and it is definitely starting to sound a little bit more sophisticated as well. But I must admit, it is also starting to sound a little bit more complicated too. And then of course you've got the option of the Velodrome or the wind tunnel. Now the benefit of both of these is obviously that they're in a controlled environment. So in theory, they should provide more accurate and better results because we haven't got interference from external factors and, well, hopefully haven't got abnormalities in the results from that. Now on the Velodrome, the idea is quite simple. You try and hold the same power on each of the runs and then track and monitor a change in your speed. So very similar to that of the field test, just obviously a little bit more accurate. The drawback, however, is the cost, and then also the fact that you can't just retest and pop into a Velodrome on any day of the week. And typically, the higher the Velodrome and for the testing will cost you anywhere in the region of £400 to £600 per session. But that cost and exclusivity just increases again, I'm afraid, for the wind tunnel, because you're looking at upwards of £700 per session. However, it is arguably the most accurate, and that is why so many brands use the wind tunnel for testing of their products during the development phases and pre-release, because you can control and change everything, including how the wind interacts with a ride or a product at different speeds and even different angles. But not only is there a downside in the cost, but also the fact that it's not like the real world. Now, so many riders come out of the wind tunnel with a super low CDA and then just cannot replicate that outdoors. And that's because maybe they had their head down super low. That's really common in the wind tunnel. And obviously you're not going to do that outside, but also they may have got themselves in a position that they can't sustain outside and push the same power outside. So that's where I think it's time to talk about Notio. Now, in my opinion, this is a perfect blend of that high accuracy whilst being readily accessible and easy to retest. Now, essentially, this device is a pitot tube like that you may have seen on F1 cars or maybe even aeroplanes. So this device has got a bunch of sensors built into it that when you link that with a power meter and a speed sensor, can calculate your CDA and your on-bike performance in real time. Now I'm actually going to give this device a bit of a whirl today, just a simple experiment, gilet fastened versus unfastened, and I think we all know the results on this one, but that's kind of the idea anyway. So for this, simply I've got to connect the Notio device, the power meter, and the speed sensor to the Notio app, then just input a few specifics similar to that golden cheetah, but in this instance, it's the bike weight, the wheel circumference, and the rolling resistance, which again, you can find very easily online. And that's it. I think it's time for me to get going. So for this test, I'm using a good 3 to 4 kilometer flat section of road as recommended, with no sharp turns or anything that might cause me to decelerate. I'm going to maintain 35 kilometers per hour throughout all my test runs as I ride out along the section, turn, and then ride back, all in position, a total of approximately 6 to 8 kilometers. Well, I've done my runs. I've got all the data stored here on the Notio app. You can also record it and collect it onto your head unit as well if you like. Now, no surprises, I think, here really. I did have a lower CDA and a quicker time with the gilet fastened up. Don't think I've really shocked anyone with that one. But the cool thing was I had all that data, and very accurate data for that matter, within seconds of finishing the test, and in a way that I could quickly and easily understand. In fact, you can go a step further. If you've got a Garmin head unit, you can see that all in real time as you're riding along, which is a very cool feature, and they're planning to roll that out across other brands and devices soon. Now, this Notio device will cost you in the region of $950, which is similar to that of maybe wind tunnel testing. But the beauty with this one is that you have that to own, to keep it, to use as and when you like. So if you do get some new kit or you change and tweak your position, you can quickly whiz out and verify that and check it. Pretty cool in my opinion. Now, if you do have any more questions on aero testing or the Notio device, please do drop them in the comments section below and I will try and get back to you. If you have enjoyed today's video, do hit that thumbs up button. And if you would like to see more from GTN, do follow us over on social media and give us a subscribe on YouTube.